Yeah, the wait is almost over, the clock ticking down to 9 o'clock, and our newsroom is busy and standing by to bring you all the big stories from the Premier League fixtures announcement.
Oh yes, 10 seconds and counting. It's only been over for 24 days, but get your diaries ready because you can start planning for the new Premier League season now. And here are the opening day fixtures. Woo! That was tense, wasn't it? Let's have a look. Pick out your team straight away. This is the opening weekend to be played starting August the 12th. That's the Saturday. 13th is the Sunday. Let's start right at the top. And Arsenal, they will play Leicester, of course, who were the defending champions last season. And look at the second fixture. New to the Premier League, first season in the Premier League, Brighton, and they host Manchester City at the Amex Stadium. Welcome to the Premier League, Brighton fans. And as for the champions, Chelsea, they're at home. Stamford Bridge against Sean Dyche's Burnley. Huddersfield travel to Crystal Palace. So your first season in the Premier League as well, Huddersfield fans. It'll be at Selhurst Park with a game against Crystal Palace. We're going to have Leon Osman in the studio. His old side Everton are at home to Stoke City on the opening day. And moving over to the other side, I'm sure fans at home, you've already picked out your team. But Jose Mourinho and Manchester United start with a home game against West Ham. What about Rafa Benitez and Newcastle back in the Premier League? And it's a game at St James's Park. It is against Maurizio Pochettino's Tottenham Hotspur, of course, who've had a couple of great seasons. They'll be amongst the title favourites next season. Southampton, you start at home to Swansea City. Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool are travelling to take on Watford. Marco Silva, of course, a new season for Watford and Watford fans. And two teams that did well last season and surprised a number of football fans and football pundits. West Brom take on Bournemouth. So Chelsea, the defending champions, Antonio Conte's side winning the title by 7 points. Will they repeat that in 2017-2018? Well, if they're going to do it, they're going to have to get off to a good start. And they didn't do that last season, did they? They really turned it around. This is the opening six for them. They start at home to Burnley, as we've just said. How about this? They will travel to Wembley in their second game of the season to take on rivals Tottenham. What a corker that'll be. And it'll be the first game that Spurs will play in the Premier League at Wembley Stadium. It's against the champions. Absolutely brilliant. Everton will then travel to Stamford Bridge before a trip to Leicester City. Another difficult match in their opening six. A game at Stamford Bridge against Arsenal and Arsene Wenger, of course, before a trip to Stoke City. That is the opening six for the defending champions. But what about Tottenham, who we mentioned? Well, they finished second behind Chelsea. They won 9 of their last 10 Premier League games. They'll be hoping to pick up exactly how they finished off last season. So let's have a look at Spurs' opening 6 games. As we've already said, a trip to St James's Park. And then that game against Chelsea at Wembley Stadium. It's a tough couple of opening games. They then host Burnley at Wembley. A trip to Goodison Park follows for a game against Everton. They're then home to Swansea, and then a trip to the London Stadium to take on West Ham United. What about Pep Guardiola? He'll be hoping for a better return in his 2017-18 season. They were big favourites ahead of last season, but he found it tough at times. Man City, 15 points off the pace last season. He'll be hoping for a better season this time around. And let's see what Pep's got ahead of him for the opening 6. As we mentioned, they travel to the Amex Stadium, a lovely-looking fixture there against newly promoted Brighton. And then the second game is a home game at the Etihad against Everton. That's the first home match of the season, followed by a trip to Bournemouth to take on Eddie Howe's team, and then a great fixture here as they host Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool. That's the 4th game of the season. Two sides who will be hoping for a title run this season. A trip to Watford follows, and then the final game of their opening 6 fixtures is a home match against Crystal Palace. Jurgen Klopp, we mentioned him there, didn't we, in Liverpool. This will be his second full season in charge. They finished in the top 4, of course, last season, but will he be able to leave the club to the one thing that all Liverpool fans have been hoping for and waiting for, and that would be the Premier League title? And this is their opening 6 games, Liverpool. They start with that trip to Watford, as we mentioned. They then host Crystal Palace. Arsenal then will travel to Anfield, followed by a trip to Manchester City. That's two tough fixtures there. That's the game we just told you about. Burnley at home will follow, and then a trip to Leicester City. So the pick-out games there, Arsenal and Manchester City. And as for Arsenal, they of course have missed out on Champions League qualification for the first time under that man there, Arsene Wenger. So they'll be hoping to do better next season and finish in the top four. He's, of course, signed a new two-year deal. How will the players and the fans and everyone at the club respond to that in 2017-18? And these are the opening 6 fixtures for them. As we said, they start by hosting Leicester City at home. They follow with a trip to Stoke City, then a tough-looking game at Anfield. Then after the international break, it's Bournemouth at home, a trip to Stamford Bridge to take on the champions, and then West Brom travel to Arsenal. That's the first 6 games. The Emirates Stadium for West Brom is game number 6. 2 major trophies for Jose Mourinho in his first Manchester United season. Of course, they won the League Cup and then the Europa League. They'll be playing in the Champions League next season. However, as far as the Premier League is concerned, they won't be happy with the 6th place finish. Will they be contenders next season? They'll certainly be hoping to win the title. And here's how Manchester United will start. As we said, home to West Ham at Old Trafford. It's then Swansea for their first away game of the season. That one's August the 19th. Leicester City are then the visitors to Old Trafford before a trip to Stoke, a home game against Everton, and then they travel down to play Southampton away. That's their 6th game of the season.
Yeah, well, what about the 3 promoted sides? Of course, Newcastle returning straight back to the Premier League at the first time of asking. So how will Rafa Benitez's side fare now that they are back? Here is how their first 6 fixtures are looking for them. And how about that for an opening game? It is Tottenham at home in that first fixture. Their first away trip is to fellow promoted side Huddersfield there. It is then West Ham at home, Swansea away, Stoke at home, followed by Brighton away. That makes their first 6 fixtures of the new Premier League season. Well, what about Brighton? They, of course, I mean, look at those scenes after they're celebrating their promotion to the first, for the first time in their history. This is the moment you have been waiting for, Brighton fans. Here are your first 6 fixtures in the Premier League. Let's have a look at them now. And Pete's already mentioned that huge start for Brighton. It is at home to Manchester City. What a fixture to open up the Premier League season 2017-18. It's then away to Leicester, away at Watford, home to West Brom, away at Bournemouth, and then that home match against Newcastle towards the end of September. Of course, it's not just Brighton making their Premier League debut. Huddersfield are as well. This was the moment. Christopher Schindler with that penalty sealing their promotion to the Premier League. The last time Huddersfield fans were in the top flight, that was back in 1972. And here is what awaits you Huddersfield fans. Your first 6 fixtures there. How are they going to start there? Crystal Palace away on August the 12th. That is followed by a home match against fellow promoted side Newcastle. It's then home to Southampton, away at West Ham, Leicester at home, and then Burnley away completes your first 6 fixtures.
Right, but what about those huge showdowns that could potentially have a massive impact on the title race? Well, this fixture always, of course, gets plenty of attention. 2 big rivals, Liverpool against Manchester United, the 2 most successful clubs in English football history. And they'll meet at Anfield on October the 14th, with the return fixture at Old Trafford taking place on March the 10th. Another of those rivalries, of course, for United is the Manchester derby. It'll be Jose Mourinho against Pep Guardiola. Big-name players will be involved in this one as well. And there are the fixtures, as you can see. They'll get reacquainted December the 9th at Old Trafford first. And they don't meet again until fairly late on in the season. Could be a huge game, that, in the title race. They face each other at the Etihad on April the 7th. Another big rivalry, of course, with Arsenal. No doubt this one. It is the London derby between Arsenal and Spurs. Spurs, of course, who finished above Arsenal for the first time in the Premier League last season. The first of those North London derbies is November the 18th. It is at the Emirates Stadium, and the 2 will meet again at Wembley on February the 10th. Arsenal, of course, have enjoyed their recent trips to Wembley, winning the FA Cup 3 times in the last 4 years, of course. Will they have a similar success in the Premier League? OK, what about the Merseyside derby? Another of English football's great rivalries. Liverpool did the double last season over Everton. Sadio Mane getting that last-minute win, you'll remember, at Goodison Park, with Jamie Carragher going crazy in the studio. Now, the first Merseyside derby of the season will be at Anfield, December the 9th. It takes place there at the home of Liverpool, and then they travel to Goodison Park April the 7th. Big weekend that April the 7th. Some big fixtures as well. We saw, I think, Manchester United and Manchester City playing each other on the same day. Now, it's fair to say there's not much love lost between these two sides. Tottenham and Chelsea, the rival really stepped up a notch last season, with the two clubs finishing first and second in the Premier League, and Spurs keeping the title race alive, of course, towards the end of the season. The first fixture in the Premier League will be the one at Wembley Stadium, Tottenham against Chelsea. That's August the 19th. And then the reverse fixture, Spurs heading to Stamford Bridge, that one on March the 31st. That's always interesting when Jose Mourinho comes up against his former club, isn't it? And can Manchester United push Chelsea a little closer in the title race this season? Mourinho will head back to Stamford Bridge, a place where he enjoyed so much success. That game on November the 4th. And then the champions Chelsea travel to Old Trafford, February the 24th. Now, this used to be one of the standout Premier League fixtures, didn't it? Maybe that's a little bit harsh. But Arsenal and Manchester United finished 5th and 6th, respectively, last season. Both will be very keen to improve on that. Certainly Arsenal, who finished 6th and missed out on the top 4 for the first time under Arsene Wenger. The game at the Emirates Stadium is December the 2nd, as we head towards that busy sort of Christmas programme. And then Arsenal face Manchester United at Old Trafford, April the 28th. Again, that's a late game in this season. Could it have an impact on the title race? It's fair to say that Jurgen Klopp and Antonio Conte are two of the more animated managers in the Premier League, aren't they? They love being animated on the touchline, and those two go head-to-head for the first time this season. November the 25th is the game at Anfield, as Liverpool host Chelsea. Chelsea then host Liverpool at Stamford Bridge in the return tie. That's May the 5th. Again, late in the season there at Stamford Bridge. Could be a hugely important game. How about this London derby then? Chelsea versus Arsenal. Not long to go until the first meeting between those two sides. Chelsea take on Arsenal September the 16th. And then Arsenal against Chelsea. The return of this big fixture comes in January, New Year's Day. Arsenal won that one 3-0 last season, I believe. New Year's Day, what a game that'll be for those two sides. A meeting between two title contenders, Chelsea and Manchester City. Early again, September the 30th for the game at Stamford Bridge. Pep Guardiola's side travelling to take on Antonio Conte's team. And the return fixture, March the 3rd, as City host Chelsea. Chelsea won 3-1 at the Etihad, you may remember, last season. And it's the return of Brighton's rivalry with Crystal Palace. We've heard fans talking about this one this week, haven't we? A big rivalry, and the last meeting came in a memorable playoff semi-final back in 2013 as Palace ultimately went through 2-0 on aggregate before going on to get promoted. The two sides will have to wait until November the 28th for their first game. That one will be at Brighton at the Amex Stadium. The Selhurst Park return is April the 14th. Well, which fans have got the longest trips to make over Christmas and New Year? We'll look at who might need to get an early night on Christmas Day.